Weight loss is the most common fitness goal out there, but there is a huge overlooked difference between weight loss and fat loss. While these may seem like the same thing, the main difference is when you solely focus on losing weight based on what is happening on the body weight scale alone, you're most likely losing much more muscle mass than you need to, and too much muscle loss can decrease your metabolism, making it harder to lose more weight, and to be honest, just making you look like a smaller version of yourself instead of more toned or defined. Which is why today I'm going to share with you 5 signs that you're actually losing fat and not muscle, so you can reach your goals and also create that dream body you've been working towards. Starting with the first sign, number 1, the way your clothes fit. One way to tell if you're losing fat and not muscle is to notice how your clothes are fitting. As you burn fat, you may start to notice that your clothes are fitting differently. Maybe your favorite shirt that usually fits pretty well is starting to feel a little bit loose, or maybe you no longer have to shimmy into your favorite pair of jeans. But clothes fitting differently is a good indication that most of it is probably fat and you're retaining some muscle. Now you may be wondering, well, Dr. Mark, why can't I just use the scale weight or my body weight scale to measure progress? And absolutely, the scale is an important metric of progress and I do want you to use it. But the scale really only measures one number, and that's your body weight. And as you're starting to understand, weight loss does not necessarily mean fat loss, which is what you truly want. Your total body weight is going to change based on different factors, like your total muscle mass as well as your fat mass, but also water weight, the food you ate, and everything else your body is made up of. And when you're losing weight, it sometimes can be hard to tell where that weight is coming from, especially if you're only paying attention to scale weight and that number alone. When you're losing weight and trying to tone up or lean up, really what you're trying to do is reduce your fat mass and keep most of your muscle around. Meaning you're trying to preserve all of that hard work and energy you put into the gym building that muscle in the first place. And maintaining that muscle mass is crucial, and here's why. Even though your goal may be to lose weight, that look that you're going for is probably more lean and toned up. And that look is going to come from reducing your fat mass, but also keeping your muscle mass, revealing that toned look. This look and the look that most people are going for comes from muscle mass. And although it's not an insane difference, having more muscle mass is going to be helpful for you as you try to lose fat, because having more muscle mass will allow you to burn more calories throughout the day. But here's the unfortunate reality about weight loss in general. By trying to lose fat, you need to put your body in a calorie deficit, and you do this through exercise and diet changes. And through this process, you don't just lose fat, you also lose some muscle as well, and that's just the way it goes. To do your best to maintain the muscle that you do have and maybe even build some muscle, you want to make sure you're lifting weights and eating enough protein. And because the scale weight isn't going to tell you where that weight is coming from, you want to use other metrics like how your clothes are fitting and other signs we're going to talk about in this video to confirm that you're not losing too much muscle. It's also going to help you understand why sometimes the scale is going down pretty slowly, or why your total body weight isn't changing at all, even if you're noticing other signs that you are getting leaner. And this happens because you gained small amounts of muscle mass that made up for some of the weight of the fat that you lost. Results like your clothes fitting looser are a good sign that you're losing weight and most of it's coming from fat, even if the scale weight is staying the same. But the way your clothes fit isn't the only sign that we're seeing these positive changes, which leads us to our second sign here, which are number 2, body measurements. Measuring different areas of your body through time is a good way to see if you're actually losing fat. One area that most people like to focus on is their stomach or their belly, as well as their waist and hips. Now, when you lose fat, you can't really control where on your body you'll lose it from. That is, you can't really spot reduce or pick the place where you'll lose fat, so don't do a bunch of crunches thinking that you'll lose belly fat. That being said, if you start to notice that you're losing circumference around your waist, it's usually a pretty good indication that you're losing some fat in your belly as well as everywhere else, because it's typically one of the last places to go. Using a soft measuring tape can allow you to get some pretty accurate measurements in some places like your waistline. And one thing to be mindful of when you're taking body measurements is taking the measurement in the exact same place every time. I'm not trying to turn you into a scientist or anything, but you don't want to pick a random spot on your stomach every time you make one of these measurements, because the results will be all over the place. And try to be consistent about the time of day too. For my nutrition clients, when possible, I recommend that they do these measurements first thing in the morning after going to the bathroom and before they eat anything, because that allows us to control for most of the things that matter when taking measurements. But in reality, you just want to stick to a routine that works for you and make it at the same time each time you take those measurements. So even if they're not true, at least they're relative. It's also beneficial to measure more than one part of your body. And remember that fat loss is a slow process, so don't measure yourself every day expecting to see some big changes. What you should do is take these measurements over weeks and months, and that's when you'll start to see the results that you're looking for. On the topic of measuring, another thing you can do is get a scan done, and we'll talk about different scans in a second, to get a sense of where your body is holding muscle versus fat. The gold standard for these type of measurements is a DEXA scan, which used to be historically in the past completely inaccessible. You used to only get them through a research laboratory or in a university setting, but now they've become much more accessible and inexpensive, and you can even find them in gym settings. And they're a great way to tell changes in your body composition through time. You can also use less expensive measurements through bioelectrical impedance analysis, or BIA, like in-body scans, or even these scale weights that have those sensors on them. Now, these type of measurements aren't going to be as accurate. They won't be quote unquote right. And that's okay, because that's not what we should be using them for. In reality, they provide accurate enough information to get a sense if you're moving in the right direction, which matters more than anything. Now let's move on to a more obvious way that you're losing fat and not muscle. Number 3, increased strength. Your next sign to pay attention to is your performance in the gym, more specifically your strength. This is one of the best ways to tell if you're maintaining muscle and losing fat. Having a solid resistance training routine is an important part of weight loss for this exact reason. When you lose body fat, you don't want to lose so much muscle mass as well that you become weaker. That being said, if you are losing weight and noticing that you're getting stronger, this is a good sign that things are moving in the right direction. Strength is built over time, but if you're consistent with your strength training, you're going to notice it when your performance improves and you're able to lift more weight. Speaking of which, you're going to notice this improvement in different ways, like being able to lift heavier. Maybe 3 reps of bench press at a certain weight is difficult, but over time you're able to lift it for 8 reps pretty easily. Or you're still doing 3 challenging reps, but you're able to do it at a heavier weight now because you've gotten stronger. You can also see this show up in more cardio-based exercises as well. Let's say you're using the stair stepper. If you're retaining strength generally through time, you should be able to see yourself go for a little longer or a little faster in the same distance. For the most part, these improvements wouldn't be possible if you were losing all of that weight and muscle alone. It's the combination of good resistance training as well as eating enough protein that'll allow you to maintain your strength or even build some. And let's not forget about the role of protein that goes beyond just maintaining your muscle mass. It's the nutrient that's going to help you lose weight in the first place, because as you eat more protein, you're going to be able to stay more full, which will prevent overeating, which is going to help us move to our next sign, which is number 4, you're less hungry. As you probably know, losing weight can be difficult. And that's because of hunger. Most of us enjoy eating food, so when we get hungry, it's easier to eat portion sizes that are way too big, as well as grab for foods that are way too calorie dense and don't fall in line with our goals. And this makes fat loss hard because our biological drive to consume more food gets in the way of eating less calories than we burn. So how do you overcome this? The answer is protein. If you're trying to lose body fat, you should already be eating a higher protein diet. Eating more protein is going to give you that feeling of fullness because it's more satiating, helping you control your hunger and making it easier to stick to a calorie deficit. Hunger management plays a huge role in losing body fat, but in my experience, you can also use it as a gauge if you're burning fat or burning muscle. And this is because in a roundabout way, the thing that's going to help control your hunger is eating more protein. And that's because the high levels of protein are going to allow you to stay full for longer. And at the same time, that protein is helping you maintain the muscle mass that you already do have. So in a roundabout way, if you're consuming enough protein and therefore managing your hunger, and you're not hungry all the time and the scale weight is going down, it's usually a very good indication that you're burning fat and not muscle. Now, that's not to say that hunger is a bad thing or that it's the end of the world, but if you're constantly hungry and this is a consistent feeling over time, it's usually a pretty good sign that you need more protein and you need to slow things down, because chances are when that happens, you're burning way too much muscle and not enough fat. And speaking of muscles, they are the main subject in our final sign, which is number 5, muscle definition. I'm going to say this again, lean muscle mass is one of the most important assets in your ability to lose fat. The more muscle you have, the more energy you're able to burn throughout the day. And your muscles can actually tell you if you're on the right track in your fat loss journey. And this sign of fat loss is very similar to what we covered before when we talked about strength in the gym. But instead of assessing performance in the gym, you can just look at your muscles. If you start to see visual changes of muscle definition in different areas of your body, that's a very good sign that you're losing fat. And we're talking about different veins and vascularity in your arms, or more definition in your legs and quad muscles and your shoulders. You might even start to see your ab muscles poke through, which is the coolest feeling. And these are all great signs because it means you're successfully losing body fat as well as maintaining your muscle. Just remember that building muscle and losing fat are both things that are valuable and worthwhile, but they do take time. So don't be discouraged if you don't see any big changes in shorter periods of time. Changes in muscle definition are a great sign that you're on the right track, and it also gives you some visible change to be proud of. It's important to note that you'll likely not see any of these results unless you're consistent with resistance training, consuming enough protein, and staying in a calorie deficit. But the use of those strategies, along with some of the signs that we outlined in this video, are a great way to make sure that you're losing weight in the best way possible. And that's through losing body fat and not muscle. As great as all those tips are, if you're really serious about nutrition coaching and learning more about nutrition, I want you to check out the video I've linked up right here. One aspect of weight loss that is commonly overlooked is gut health, and I'm going to teach you all about that and the science behind it in the video right here. So check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.